There has been a lot of discussion about Las Vegas and its objective drop in tourism numbers. As a result, a lot of people have been sounding the alarms of blatant anti consumer practices and escalating price points. I've personally only been to Vegas a handful of times in various circumstances, though I've never actually stayed there the way most do, the way the casino companies want you to. So I figured, much like my Walt Disney World video, I'm going to see how much a single day in Vegas costs the average person and find out if it's actually worth the money. Now, as I'm sure many people will point out, there are many different ways to do a Vegas trip for cheap. There's so many places and strategies you can choose from, not to mention the amount of comps and discounts that are always on offer. That's especially true for people who've been going to Vegas for a while now. But for the purpose of this video, I'm going to do a middle of the road style trip, a moderately priced experience on the Strip for 2 adults. And we're doing it not for the purpose of saving as much money as possible, but to be the average sort of consumers that the big casino companies expect you to be. So let's hop aboard a plane and fly down to the Sin City. Our Vegas trip begins here at the Harry Reid International Airport. Las Vegas doesn't have any public transportation that directly connects the airport to the Strip, which is honestly insane for how close they are and how many tourists fly in here every month. Regardless, the majority of passengers arriving at the airport end up using a rideshare or a taxi to the resort, and that's exactly what we did. For our one-way trip to our hotel, around a 3-mile drive, we paid $19.95. Our Uber brought us to the Paris, a Caesars-owned property centrally located near the middle of the Las Vegas Strip. This is considered a more moderate property, not super budget, but also not quite in the luxury territory, a reason why we chose it. It's also one of the more condensed resorts on the Strip, with much of its original theming still intact. The resort itself was first announced back in 1985, and at the cost of nearly $800 million, the property opened 4 years later in 1999. I personally had never been to the Paris before, but the reviews did look pretty decent, and compared to the other moderate resorts, this one was at a more reasonable price and looked pretty cool. So we arrived a little early. Vegas hotels are notorious for charging you extra fees at every step. And because we arrived early, or before their 4 p.m. check-in time, we were offered an early check-in fee of $50. I declined and instead checked our bags with the outside luggage handlers and then went to breakfast. We chose the on-property restaurant Cafe Americano. It had decent reviews and a line snaking around the entrance, so we figured we should give it a try. Emmy got the American breakfast as well as a coffee, and I got the blueberry granola bowl. Emmy liked her platter, it was about what we expected, while I thought my yogurt bowl was just fine. Honestly, halfway through, I kinda got grossed out by it, since the blueberries in it were pretty old and mushy. It is probably one of the worst restaurant yogurt bowls I've ever had. Either way, the total for our breakfast came to $66.75 after tip. Following this, we did some exploring, checking out the rest of the hotel and later getting our room. Like most mainstream Vegas resorts, this property is a Goliath, made up of almost 3,800 rooms and suites. We would get a room on the 17th floor of the Bordeaux Tower, a standard king room, the lowest category they offer. I thought this room was pretty nice. It was generally clean, felt fresh, and had mostly modern technology. There's real stone in the bathroom, and the bed was pretty comfortable. Some scuffs and stains are prevalent, especially noticeable under black lights, and the TV is a little dated, but this is a pretty decent room for a 4-star hotel. Again, this is a mega resort owned by a multi-billion-dollar casino corporation, and this room definitely feels like a cog in the enormous machine. You're not going to be blown away by unbelievable theming and decor. It's all very generic. Now, you do get a mini fridge, which is an increasingly hot commodity in Las Vegas hotel rooms these days. And while no water is provided in the room, they will give you small bottles at the front desk if you ask. Definitely don't take one from the mini bar though, as a water bottle there will run you an egregious $15. That's on top of a restocking fee of $20. If you intentionally or accidentally unplug the pressure-sensitive tray that it's on, you'll be charged $50. Absolutely insane. Another thing missing in this room is an in-room coffee maker. To get one, you'll be charged $11. That is certainly not industry standard for a 4-star hotel. Overall, I was comfortable enough in this room, and while rates on select days can get as low as $103 a night, I got it under a more average rate of $215.15. That's including the resort fee, which is an insane $62.30 with tax. Caesars claims their resort fees get you complimentary Wi-Fi, though capped at only 2 devices, any more you'll need to pay extra, unlimited local calls, and access to their fitness center, again capped at 2 people. Really, the only thing most people are typically going to be using out of that is the Wi-Fi. Now, the rest of the resort is also pretty decent. The Paris does have a few attractions, like the observation deck at the top of their half-scale replica of the Eiffel Tower, which will cost you $35. They also have a free cabaret show in the casino. As far as casino floors go, I actually do like the design of this. It's all very well themed and has detailed facades and a decent vibe. It's also one of the only times where I'm kind of fine with smoking, because you know what? We're in France. I really like the whole cabaret area with its Art Nouveau stage and the faux trees above it. The Paris also features a spa area, a theater, a rather sparse, though well-themed shopping district, and equally sparse pool area. A pretty lackluster one though, honestly, and has some of the most expensive base cocktails I've seen yet, starting at $23 before tax. Altogether, the property has 7 bars and lounges and 15 restaurants. So let's go check one of them out for lunch. But before we do that, I want to quickly mention this video's sponsor, Storyblocks. As I'm sure you've noticed, all throughout this video is beautiful and high quality stock footage of Las Vegas. That's all thanks to Storyblocks and their fantastic stock media subscription service. They have a vast library, including over 1 million 4K and HD footage, templates, music, sound, effects, images, and more. What I especially love though is that you never have to pay per clip, and with a predictable subscription cost, you can download an unlimited amount of media. As a subscriber, you'll always be legally covered with whatever media you download, and it's why I've been a paying subscriber with them since early 2017. They're just a fantastic and reliable service that obviously has been proven vital for my videos. So to get started with unlimited stock media downloads at one set price, head to storyblocks.com/brightsuntravels. A link will also be in the description below. Anyways, let's go for lunch. We chose Alexa's, an Italian restaurant that borders the strip. Again, it seemingly had good reviews with a ton of people waiting for their table. Regardless, once we did get seated, Emmy and I both got 2 alcoholic drinks and the rigatoni alla vodka. Both of our drinks tasted pretty good. I especially enjoyed my blackberry heavy desert smash, though it didn't have much alcohol in it, like at all. Our pasta was also pretty good and was very filling. Although it certainly should have been, since our total came out to $127.69, which is extremely expensive not only for what we got, but for lunch in general. I could go to basically any major city and get much better pasta for much less than what we paid. Also, looking back at our bill, I noticed something called CNF added as a line item. CNF stands for Concession and Franchise Fee. It's a fee that first showed up in around 2014, and it's essentially a nearly 5% additional tax for the services of the restaurant. It's basically a nonsense additional fee. Now, it is listed on the menu, obviously in the fine print at the bottom, although it's sometimes hidden on the menus out along the street. Restaurants essentially just bank on you not noticing, and most people just don't. However, I have seen reports that if you just ask to have it removed, they will just take it off. Anyways, no Vegas vacation is complete without going to enjoy some entertainment. Since we won't be including any money gained or lost from gambling, the only other thing to do around here is go to a museum or see a show. We chose the Blue Man Group for some reason, and that show is located all the way inside Luxor. Oh boy. So we began our trek south, down the strip, cutting through the various resorts, making our way there. It was a very hot and busy day, and as time went on, my mood slowly diminished. I ended up having to grab a water bottle by the time we made it to the Park MGM. That was $4.50. Eventually, we made it to the now Dorito-less Luxor Hotel and Casino. I certainly didn't think we'd be back here so soon, and if you're curious on what a stay here is like, well, I made a whole video about it on this channel. So we enjoyed sitting down in a nice cool theater to watch the Blue Man Group. And honestly, I thought it was pretty good. Not necessarily a show I would ever go back to see, but I think it was pretty solid for families with kids especially, though maybe 15 minutes a little too long. The loud noises and flashing lights were fun at some points, but I also left the show with a developing headache that would only get worse as the night would go on. The total for 2 people to see the afternoon showing came to $112.74. While we could have just Ubered back to our resort for dinner, we decided to just make the walk again. By this point, it was getting dark, and as we walked the strip further into the core, I was tired, my headache was getting worse, people were hounding us, trying to sell us some timeshares or some ungodly strip club thing. It wasn't great. With a dollar store bluey on the streets and a ton of people clogging the intersections, for such a walkable strip, it is kind of insane how bottlenecked these sidewalks get. And it is kind of crazy that there's essentially a 10-lane highway in the middle of it all. I was obviously not having a great time by this point. We eventually did make it back to our hotel though, just in time for our dinner reservations at Cherie Rooftop. This was a pretty cool restaurant. As its name suggests, it's located outdoors on the roof of the hotel, just underneath the Eiffel Tower. Though the vibes here were kind of weird. You have a mix of this sophisticated French aesthetic, obviously under the tower, but then you also have very loud club music blasting, but nobody dancing, and a DJ periodically making abrupt grunting noises. At least our view here was pretty great though. We were directly overlooking the dancing fountains at the Bellagio. Emmy got a cocktail and the steak frites, while I got the chicken cordon bleu. Emmy's steak was actually really good, as were the fries, but once again, her cocktail was seemingly lacking any alcohol. I personally chose not to get a drink because I knew we would be hitting the bar right after, though when our waiter got to me and I declined a cocktail order, he went the typical annoying upsell Vegas strategy by saying, "What, you don't like to party?" Yeah, alright. My chicken came out looking like an oversized crusted Tic Tac, though in fairness, it was pretty good. The sauce mixed with the spinach was especially delicious, though it just wasn't enough food, and I walked out of there still pretty hungry. The total for both of us came to $125.08. Once again, very expensive, though somehow cheaper than lunch. Finally, we decided to go for a post-dinner drink, and the original plan was to just hit the bar in the middle of the casino floor. However, I took one look at the reviews and the prices, and we decided to go to the much more interesting looking Vanderpump bar. There, Emmy got the Riviera Rules, and I got the Pump and Circumstance. And finally, we found drinks that were high quality, well crafted, and potent. However, the price did reflect that. For both of us, it came to $61.49 for 2 drinks. Oh man, and that's how we ended our day. I certainly went to bed that night not feeling super great on how much we had to shell out for a not great experience. So, what was our final tally? Well, since this is just a slice of a Vegas trip, I'm only going to count the one-way Uber fare from the airport to the resort. And even that rate can honestly vary wildly depending on the time of day. So when we add it all up, the transportation, the resort, the food, etc., our single day in Las Vegas for 2 people cost us $732.35. Oof. Now, that's very high. That's a lot of money. But I think what especially makes me angry about that figure is how lacking in quality everything was for that money. Look, it's one thing to get a $19 drink at some upscale bar in Manhattan or something. One that's probably going to be slightly more worth the money in terms of its quality and potency. That's in stark contrast to the ones we had here, which many times had been watered down to produce the best profit margins for the restaurant possible. Honestly, most of these drinks were just complete rip-offs for how little they actually gave you. A similar argument goes for the food. While all of it was generally pretty good, I wouldn't say anything was especially great. I definitely wouldn't say they were anywhere close to what they actually cost. Again, you can go to any big city and find much better food for far cheaper prices. And while the restaurants we chose were generally considered mid-tier in terms of pricing, trust me, it could get a lot worse. For example, the Paris also has a Martha Stewart restaurant where you can get a bread basket for $25, pierogies for $40, or each extra side for $19. It's insane. $732 a day is big money for not a great experience. And I mean, if you stay here with that daily budget for just 5 days, you're looking at like $3,600. And for what? Mediocre food, watered down drinks, and a money-hungry experience that is increasingly more interested in catering to wealthy people? All for a trip that is masquerading as a premium experience? You know what you could actually do for $3,600? Go to the actual city of Paris. For a 5-day Paris vacation for 2 people, you can very comfortably stay in the city at a nice hotel, eat good food, and get around a world-class destination. In fact, my example budget for this hypothetical February trip to Paris is actually cheaper than my October trip to Vegas, which is just insane. But all of this adds to the greater conversation about Las Vegas, and really tourist destinations as a whole. Everyone is out to squeeze as much money as possible out of you, while giving you an increasingly diminishing final product. And those who have been coming to Vegas for a while now will certainly have made note of that. Using our resort as an example, the Paris used to have, say, free parking back in 2016. Today, it now costs $35. Likewise, it wasn't until 2013 when all of Caesars properties, including the Paris, began charging resort fees. Back then, it ranged from $10 to $25 and covers all of the same amenities that it does today. At the time, a spokesperson for Caesars rationalized the new changes by saying, quote, "Obviously it's going to upset some people, but it's what's happening in the industry. It's a standard in the industry right now, and I'm sure they'll become accustomed to it over time." Unfortunately, that's true, but it's one thing to rationalize a $25 resort fee versus a $60 resort fee, which is what it is now. But again, this wasn't always the case. It got me thinking, what would our trip cost if we had gone in, say, 2018? Well, I did some researching, pulling historical rates and menus from 2018. Now, some of these restaurants and bars, like the Vanderpump and Cherie, didn't exist back then, so I had to find comparable spots and get an approximation. So definitely don't take this as a definitive itemized list, more of an estimation if we were to look back. Regardless, I calculated that a similar trip in 2018 would have cost around $468.04. That's a pretty steep difference between then and now. In fact, it's around 44% cheaper back then. Now, in fairness, that's crucially not accounting for inflation, which does bring that percentage down a bit. But it's still a pretty big increase for basically nothing gained to the consumer. And remember, my Vegas trip that cost over $700 didn't involve any gambling. None of these calculations have taken into account the amount people spend and how casinos in Vegas have been decreasing odds for players. According to a 2024 government study, 78% of visitors to Las Vegas gambled during their stay, and the average gaming budget is $820, a steady increase year over year. So again, most people who come here spend a couple hours a day at the casino on top of everything else. But for me personally, as someone who doesn't want to just burn my hard-earned money away at a casino and give it all to a mega corporation, I don't think I really get Vegas anymore, especially staying on the Strip. Sure, there is some fun nightlife, which is a massive expense in of itself, but during the day, what do you do? Things, of course, would be a lot easier if you had a rental car. You could then go to a bunch of different attractions and get actually good food at reasonable prices. Most of what people actually consider are good deals are all located off-strip. That, by the way, is what I would recommend to everyone. Stay off the Strip and enjoy the places that actually present good value. And then if you want, spend your extra time enjoying the chaos on the Strip. But for me, in the situation that we were in, if we were to go to all of these highly rated attractions and restaurants off the Strip, it would cost a fortune just to Uber around everywhere. The alternative is being stuck on the Strip and having to deal with all of the headaches that come with it. And there are a lot of headaches. I'm sure there's some sleeper hits and some secret spots that actually have good deals. But my god, every time I'm in Vegas, I feel like I have to do a half an hour of research every time we want something to eat. And then of course you then have all of these restaurants on the Strip that show their menu on their website, but of course don't list their prices. It's just stuff like that, annoyingly shady practices that feel malicious with a lack of transparency. Honestly, a lot gave me that vibe, especially on this trip. Like, people just walk the streets trying to blatantly scam you, or restaurants charging nonsense taxes on top of their already hiked prices. This is all while the mega corporations continue to raise their prices, all while lowering the quality of their product. I know this kind of applies to everything right now, but most places on the Vegas Strip especially feel like a cynical cash grab. Everything is expensive here, not because it has to be, but because it can be. And you know what? It works. Remember, decades ago, Vegas was all about targeting the middle-class tourist and luring them in with luxuries at a price point you couldn't find anywhere else in America. In some cases, that is still true, but the illusion of it all back then was about living like you were rich, providing tremendous value with really good quality product to go along with it. And yes, it was all a ploy to get you to spend money at their casino, but now it's just bad value, mediocre luxury, while also the expectation of spending money at the casino and nickel and diming you everywhere you go. If anything, Vegas is increasingly becoming a target for wealthier people, and in the end, the house always wins. But despite all of these headlines saying Vegas tourism has been dropping, it certainly didn't feel like it while I was there. But the data doesn't lie, and who knows, maybe people are finally getting fed up with all of these price hikes and fees. I know I certainly am, and I don't think I'll be coming back anytime soon on my own dime. But what do you think? Am I being too harsh and nihilistic here, or are you fed up with Vegas as well? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks again to Storyblocks for sponsoring this video and helping me pay my way through the endless nickel and diming here in Vegas. My name is Jake, and thank you very much for watching.